Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Moped Outlaws. Today, our guest is Sarita Patel. And as you can tell from this interview, which is being done right after we talk to Sarita, she has a very calming, beautiful effect on people. And I'll just be honest, I feel a little bit challenged.
Really? That's
Yeah,
wild.
to do better. Like she sets a high bar. She's done a lot.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I'm speechless. Support Blast, support Compton Cowboys. Please subscribe and pass this around to your friends. Mark and I really love what we're doing, and the opportunity to continue this for another 6 years would just be heaven on earth. And
Heal yourself.
Sis, hallo?
Blijven.
Dus u zeker wegen them.
Yo je iets niet, joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Marc.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Moped Outlaws. I want to introduce you all to someone who is quite simply a force of nature. If you look at her professional life, you will see a brilliant problem solver and a creator of beautiful, intentional spaces. But that's just what she does, not who she is. To anyone lucky enough to know and be in her inner circle, Sarita is a devoted daughter, a loyal sister, and the kind of friend who fiercely has your back. She's a single mom raising her child, and a cancer survivor who understands exactly what it means to fight for your life while holding on to your deepest empathy. She's a woman who does not just walk away from broken systems. She stands her ground. And when faced with profound injustice, she fought back, won, and changed 3 laws in the state of California. Now she is taking all of that hard-earned grit, wisdom, and heart and pouring it into her next chapter as the founder of Something for Good. She's remarkably resilient, completely genuine, and possesses the exact kind of untamed, authentic spirit that belongs on the back roads we travel on Moped Outlaws. I am so honored to introduce you to Sarita Patel. Thank you for being here.
Oh, Mark. That's so true.
Yes, it is. Well done. I'm glad you weren't demure about it.
No, it's pretty true, and I sometimes it's helpful to hear somebody else describe you. I think we're really needing people to describe us as how they see us, so that we can be reminded that we all kind of have a soul mission that we're cognizant of or not, but when we're reminded of the things that we just do naturally, I think it puts us back on a path. So thank you.
You're welcome. You've earned it, clearly. And I wanted to do right by our friendship and your level of contribution. Like, it's not just any old contribution. And your dedication and spirit is something I've always felt. So I want to know, as the founder of Something Good, what was it that created the initial spark? And do you remember a specific moment that made you realize this was the exact thing you needed to build?
I do, actually. So I had to come up with an LLC like in 2 minutes to accept a consulting contract at my longtime employment place where you and I both worked. And so I was like, LLC? I've always worked for other people. And so I said, okay, I'll call it Madmana. And Madmana actually stands for MAD, which are the first 3 initials of my mother's name. MAN are the first 3 letters of my dad's name. His name is Manu. And the A on the end kind of stood for this feminine, divine introduction that I was feeling was going to be necessary in the world. This isn't about being a feminist, but it was about my parents had 4 daughters. And so I
Mm.
it feminine, or else it would have been madman. And I was like, no, men are not mad. It's Madmana. So I remember that minute, and I had to call my lawyer and say, hey, can you set up an LLC for me right away? Which he did. So it started off just because I needed a vehicle to accept a contract. What it ended up being very naturally over the course of the next few months was I was really feeling a shift in our humanity. Like, if I don't start really helping the regular people, which are, to me, the creatives and the entrepreneurs, then we might get squished by the boogeyman.
Mm.
And it just came like that, just so instantly. And I was like, how would I do that? And, when I reflected back upon what I was going to, upon my past and what I was going to do in the future, I said, I always do things for the ultimate good, where both sides inevitably win. And so I'm going to do that again. I've got to do something for good. And what good looks like is different for everyone. So I've got to figure out what my good is and then go find other people who are in alignment with me. So it really happened in 2015.
So you mentioned Madmana as the name, and I've been referring to it as something good. Where's the disconnect there, and how do we close the loop on that?
That's a great question. So I had sent you, so in 2018, I sat down at my desk. I had just been consulting in Silicon Valley for about 3 years with some pretty heavy hitters. And I sat down and I said, okay, I've kind of done that. And then I grabbed a piece of paper and I started to write down all of the things I had done in that 3-year period. And I said, now I want to be the founder of something good. And so, because my experience in Silicon Valley was one where I was truly a justice warrior. And so, and we can go into that, but what I really realized is it's a miracle that I actually lasted for 3 years in Silicon Valley, because I'm pretty mouthy, but I always provide a solution. And I don't react to powerful people. I respond to them, and what they didn't even notice was that they were feeling better and they were given options in their daily lives that they had not even considered, right? So it kept looping back to founder for something good was really what Madmana is. And Madmana is a culmination of the good that my parents really exhibited in their life. I mean, they were extraordinary people, extraordinary. So sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Do you want to finish your thought?
Well, a lot of people didn't know my parents, but then a lot of people did know my parents. And I'm not saying I had perfect parents. I'm saying I was gifted these extraordinary individuals. And I don't think it's an accident that, how families get together, but what they were able to just seed everywhere in India, in America, was so divinely timed for us to then take over and keep giving, that I knew nobody would really care about what Madmana stood for. So I had to just say founder for something good. And then over time, they started to mesh together.
Okay. You said we take over. Are you referring to your 3 sisters and you?
Originally, I hoped that me and my sisters would sort of carry on some sort of legacy of that with our own families. individually and as family members. Since then, I've had so my youngest sister passed away when she was 21. She was at the University of Chicago, and I'm not really even quite sure how she passed away. There's some mystery around that in my mind. Just last year, I had another sister pass away, and there's a little bit of mystery around her death too. So now I have one sister left. And so when I say we, yes, initially it was 3 sisters, and it was really my youngest sister who passed away was so divinely inspired. She was a philosopher, she was a poet, she was a traveler. Her ambition in life was to live on a banana farm and learn from farmers. And yet she was so highly educated, but she was so it was like the 3 of us just, that loss was so profound for us. And so we just had, the way that we grieved and went on was by watching our parents grieve and move on and never lose love in their heart. And then we 3 just said, Mom and Dad aren't going to be here forever either. And what they taught us does need to be remembered. It's not a monument. It's not a plaque. It's not money. It's this essence of what a human can be.
All right, so I believe the 3 of us here have a belief in divinity. And what I'm wondering, in your experience, like you've said, you've been in realms like Silicon Valley, and from listening to some of your podcasts, you've been in realms of billionaires and high-end celebrities. Does that level of luxury and finance and fluff of one's ego impede one's ability to be spiritually motivated?
No. It's a great question, and I think it's a question that a lot of people are wondering about. I think it can very easily, and we can look at all those mechanisms that encourage a lack of spirituality. Because if you're spiritual, you can't look at the material world without improving it. I just don't, and that
right. That's
I just
brilliant.
don't see how it's possible.
Right.
So there's got to be guardrails around them, because if you can reach that level of success, believe that it requires a lot of spirituality, because you have to have faith in yourself, faith in this idea that you're doing, mobilizing large groups of people and just staying true and really reflecting upon yourself as you keep going along. Because if you're born sort of narcissistic, you're not going to attract the people that you need to help you. Right? So, but what I see now, being around this realm from the earliest that I can remember, I mean, my grandparents were very, very successful farmers in India, and they owned a ton of land. And so just so you have a basis of it, my grandfather had a main house, and then his family had houses around the compound, and then there were houses for the people who worked there. And it was a recycling event that everybody took care of each other. So even though my grandparents had servants and things like that, they were in service. They weren't in servitude.
That's a powerful distinction.
Yeah.
My projection and maybe misunderstanding or lack of insight of Indian culture is that women's voices are somewhat caged or somewhat limited traditionally. So how was it that your parents created a mouthy person.
Well, if we want to go back to divinity, maybe they called me in and I called. No, but I will say this: my dad and I we butted heads a lot when I was younger, because I was always going sideways. And my dad was like, "Oh my God, how are we going to manage this one?" And because I wasn't the traditional listen to everything everyone says kind of kid. But let me back up one step, and that is the fact that my parents had 4 girls was also a bit of a problem in the Indian culture, because girls they're a burden. And at least it was like that when I was growing up. And my mother kept saying, well, yeah, so we keep having these girls. So what? They're healthy. So we're going to raise them to be healthy human beings. So my mom was already pretty strong, but she was a part of the culture where she had to really monitor herself. Like there were things that she wanted to do that she knew if she did, she'd get into trouble in the society. And my dad was a big part of that. He was a complete, I'd say misogynistic person, because that's how he was raised. That's all he knew. They didn't have a name attached to it. It was just how you referred and treated this lower class of person. So I would say that I'm the eldest. And so that means when you're the eldest of an immigrant family, you're also testing all the waters, and then you bring back that information and you share it with your siblings, right? So I was always going out there first. Looking, pruning, experimenting, so that my sisters wouldn't feel the hurt that I did, right? I wanted to make their life easier. So I think my attitude with my dad, it basically started to diminish when he saw that everything I touched turned to gold, like everything. So for him, the success level was monetary.
Do you think being in the United States helped him to make that shift? Could he have done that in India?
No. And that's such a great one, because when I was born, my parents were going to go back to India. I was around 3 months old, and they were packing everything up and getting ready to go. My dad's visa had expired, but that was by design. He never intended on staying in America. He was the son that they sent to America because they knew that he would come back. He was very loyal. He followed all the rules. He just did as his elders told him. When I was born, they made a change to the vaccination schedules, and normally you could vaccinate a 3-month-old baby. They had just changed it to like either 12 months or 18 months. So I couldn't get a visa to go to India with my parents. So my dad was outraged. He was like, what are we going to do? I'm supposed to go back. I have to go back. And, my mom, who didn't really even know my dad, was like, oh my God, this guy's got a temper. Everyone in India was right. I've got to watch out. She was petrified to leave me at home by myself or with him. I'm just going to flush her down the toilet and then we'll go back. And so my mom had to figure out, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? I know it sounds so arcane, but in India, if you've got a problem, you just get rid of it, especially if it's a girl. And so there are lots of girl babies that are killed in India, to keep the lineage going on. So my mother very cleverly figured out who in the community to to talk to that could talk to my dad about how that was not cool in America.
Mm.
And so my mother did find another female doctor who worked at Cedar Mount Sinai. She was brilliant. Her name is Sati Sheth, and she's still alive today. And my mother told her what was happening, and Sati said, I'll talk to him. He's just an impatient Indian man, you know. And so she said to my dad, what are you, backwards? They don't do this here. So stay here for another year. What's the big deal? You can go back later. And my dad was like, oh yeah, you're right. I wasn't going to do that. Complete narrative shift. So I think that, you know, I tell people this story and people know my dad and they're like, Sarita, you're making this up. And I'm like, no, I'm not. So it was my mother who was clever, who had to figure out how to get the message to the receiver in a way that would result in a positive outcome, which was for humanity. It wasn't just about me. She was a protector of humans. And she did it. So imagine having a mother like that for me. I mean, Marc knows me, right? I'm very clever. I don't like to disturb the shit, but I will if I have to.
Right. So this speaks to your development through the lens of having to speak truth to power to your dad right away, just be right. And then having this cleverness that your mom essentially imbued you with in terms of environment and genetics, and then entering into the halls of power with this innate ability to stand up and speak truth to power, literally, and be creative. In what ways did you mimic your mom's behavior by sort of knowing the message couldn't come from you, but had to come from other ways, other folks?
Yeah. I think, you know, like if you take that example of my mother in that situation, that just kept happening all over, right? Growing up, because my dad was, again, he was a follower. So if somebody told him, you're a Republican today, he'd say, okay. You're a Democrat tomorrow. Okay. You know, you're for this. I mean, he was just such a follower. And my mother was not, because my mother, they took her out of school in second grade. Right. So they did that, I think, because somebody recognized that she was so clever that she could have been a problem. So now going back to me, I don't think I ever really looked at these people as powerful. I just looked at them like they had a lot of ability to control a situation. So there are people who aren't wealthy that still have control, right? Which then becomes power. And so it's how you control your ability to use your power, right? So that you could take a superintendent of a school. That's a who has a lot of control over the students, over the teachers, but he might not have a big salary, right? But there's a lot of shenanigans that go on in schools too. So I think it's important to discern that I don't really look at powerful people only in one way. I just look at it like what their ability to navigate their control is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think we have some great examples. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name here in California that rallied the grape workers.
Oh, Cesar Chavez.
Cesar Chavez, thank you. Is a great example of someone who had power and it wasn't based on finances. And he changed a lot of people's lives for the better.
Well, and it should be noted that Dolores Huerta was one of the main reasons that his vision became reality, right?
Yes. And I think even with Yes, we learned that there's a lot of people supporting the spearhead of a movement.
Right.
There are, right. And that's where, you have to be clever because you need allies, right?
Yeah.
None of us
But there's
does
something male
anything.
female here that, like your mom and your father, similar dynamic. There was a powerful awareness and creativity that she had that she used to influence him, and then he made something with that. And then in Dolores Huerta's biography, her experience with Caesar is also very similar. She took his elements and then she made things happen on the ground that ultimately made her the successor, when she was also probably leading from behind for a lot of that period of time. And then there's also this reflection now in your life where you've created transformation in concert with male figureheads as a result of your talents and your insight and your fruit, that you're bringing things to fruition. So
Yeah, very well said. I mean, it's an alchemy, right?
right.
Well, so in your experience, is that alchemy necessary? Like in your personal path, do you find the male energies important to the good of what you're doing?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I do. I mean, I think it's helpful because the male has an energy, if it's an organic human being, then there are elements of the masculine that are absolutely necessary to support the female. It doesn't have to be like this subservient thing, but I think the places I've seen it, it's like there's this balance, that is just so like a river that I often don't even say male and female. I just, the spirits are like aligning, the souls are aligning, and one has male energy and the other one has a feminine energy. And I think it's more important to talk about it in that way because it diffuses the duality. It's like enough already.
Do you think that's what's being explored, especially with our youth, with this fluid gender element and how sex and gender are being explored in a very fluid manner?
Yeah. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but I worked for Andy Warhol in the 80s.
Oh, no, I did not know that.
Yeah. So I was there from 1984 to 1987.
Wow.
And I didn't even really know who Andy Warhol was back then because I was so busy kind of being an entrepreneur. But my sister went to Carnegie Mellon and she worked in the alumni office. And so she had to contact all the alumni for donations for the university. And so anyway, the story of how I got there is another story. But when I worked there in the early 80s, I was exposed to a lot of this gender fluidity. And coming from the Midwest, I didn't even know that there were gay people or that there were people who questioned their sexuality. It was just so foreign to me. And yet I like literally got smacked right into the middle of the epicenter of that. It's like I just saw it. So imagine what I'm seeing today, having the background of what I observed back then. It's just like crazy. So I think the reason that they're questioning it is because we are in a time of hyper desire to be at the highest level of consciousness. And so when you have that wind behind you, you have to question everything.
Wow. I haven't heard it put that succinctly before, but that really drives it home for sure.
Yeah.
When you think about what Something for Good or Madmana is doing, what is it you want to what do you feel like the tangible impact is supposed to be?
So that I've gone up and down with that. That's changed a lot, but and when I say changed a lot, I think I've changed the mechanics quite a bit. The mission hasn't changed. And how that is when you've got a whole bunch of human beings doing similar things independently, maybe only 1 or 2% of those people are going to actually survive, right? So my thought was, let's get all these people who are, and let's put them together so that they can work together, and I can sort of go, you go there, you go there, you go there. But then there's another benevolent force above it that actually supports the mission of the humans. Okay, so there's got to be supporters, and then there has to be the people who do the actual what do you call it, execution.
Operations.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The operations. So in 2018 I did make a shitload of money in Silicon Valley. Okay, and it's a shitload for me, but with that money, I was able to funnel that into Madmana and basically fund my own operations. So I asked plenty of people, hey, here's my idea. This is what I want to do. Pick a story. And I showed it to lots of billionaires and millionaires. And they were like, we're not interested. It's too good. And I was like, oh, nobody wants to do good things? I was like, wow, okay. So that, I just lodged that in my head, and I said, I might have to just do this by myself. And so what I did was I invested in like 12 different people and projects over time. And I would go in and, what was going on, make some minor adjustments. And then all of a sudden, the wheels would start rolling. The gears were in motion. And people couldn't really figure out what it was that I actually did. And that's because it was alchemy. And I couldn't say words like alchemy because then I'd be put in the woo-woo bucket, right? And I'm like, I'm woo-woo, but I'm also very, strategic in my thinking and logical. And I test things out. I don't just, look at astrology charts all day. But I do use astrology, and I do use numerology, and I do use human design and all sorts of things that are available to people in order to round out my understanding of people. So I wish I could be very straight and just have like a marketing spiel, but I don't.
I'm so glad you don't. I am curious though, what astrological sign are you and what human design?
So in the tropical astrology, I'm a Gemini. In the sidereal, I'm a Taurus. So there's a big difference in tropical and sidereal, which is looking at the actual sky as it exists for real, versus tropical, which is somewhat a snapshot that is then moving. So it's not really real. And so it's really not real. And that's a whole nother episode if you want to have, and I could bring on people that would just floor you. But the reason I'm telling you about this is because in India, they follow the Vedic astrology, which is based on the sidereal sky. Okay. So they're constantly looking at the sky to see what's happening with the planets. My name was given to me by the alignments of the constellations at the time of my birth. And my name means river, that which keeps things flowing.
Got it. So sartorially?
Sidereal.
Not sartorially, which is something else completely.
Yeah, sidereal.
You're a Taurus, sidereally. And then a Gemini by what most Westerners would consider their method. And then what's your human design?
human design. So again, if you follow the tropical, then I'm a generator, which makes sense because you know me. I'm just like
Yeah.
the Energizer Buddy. But then in the sidereal calculation, it makes me a
A projector.
and very misunderstood, ahead of the times, needs people to support.
And you need an
Now that I
invitation
looked
to,
at both of them,
and you need an invitation to actually produce. You can't just, yeah.
show
I
up.
think it's
So-
Gemini of you to say, to always have these dual things as part of the way that you relate them to us, which is okay. I'm not capping on it. I'm just like going, I see the truth of both the sidereal and the other one. Sorry, I can't remember
Tropical.
shit. Tropical
It's okay,
these days.
tropical. Yeah,
Um,
well, just real quickly on that, when I found out that I was a Taurus in this other one, I was like, I'm not a Taurus. I'm not, because I had already been programmed to think I'm a Gemini. But now I can see how I can go in and out. It's because the tropical Gemini of me, that's what has allowed me to actually function in society at my highest level, right? So that's the collective. That's why I've been able to be everywhere and try lots of different things, because I kind of went with society. Now I'm in a different place in my life where I'm sort of in the forefront. So I have to recognize my Gemini qualities, but I have to also go, this is what the next stage of your life is all about. It is about humanity, and it is about showing people new ways, and communicating them in a manner that they can understand and act. So this has been a real struggle for me, because I'm like, no, I want to be behind the scenes. But that's just not gonna, that's gonna be irresponsible if I stay behind the scenes now.
Right. So much of you taking the stands that you've taken in various different environments that you've done that sounds Taurian to me. So I get why that surfaces as well, because you just like got these feet on the ground. I'm not moving because this is the way it is. This is the right path. We're going to stay here, or we're going to continue forward in this manner. Where does joy fit for you in Madmana? Like, what is it? What lights you up about it?
Well, I would say what lights me up about it is just going, who am I going to meet today that's going to show me why I need to get involved with their life? You know, I talk to everybody. That's why I have a podcast, because, 2.5 years ago, my business partner said, I've never seen anyone talk to as many people as you do. And I said, well, people tell me things. And then I sit there and I scratch my head and I try to find a solution, but through that, people telling me things, and I do have quick ways of solving problems that are unique, right? So it's hard for me not to feel joy when somebody's like exhausted issue is like fixed in a second. And we're not themselves. These are things that almost just like dislodge the grease from a drain, but then they have to be responsible for the flow to continue. So I'm not an enabler.
I have a question, because I heard on the most recent episode your co-host say to you very directly that your friends are not really your friends, that they're not really there for you the way you're there for everyone else. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that statement he was making.
Sure. My friends, who I thought were my friends, aren't my friends. They are, they're people that I interact with, But if I had to depend on them or if I needed something, he's absolutely correct. There's no reciprocity. So I've had to really, you probably heard on that podcast, I had to like shut that thing down, or else my whole life would just go down the drain, because I have to take care of myself too. Right? So what I really saw is in these times of chaos and uncertainty, people are used to having everything just be very convenient. And so I'm a very convenient friend.
Mm.
So, or a convenient, whatever you want to call it, let's come up with a word for that. And I know they have this, but so I'm re-examining what friend looks like. And that's why I use the word ally a lot now. And I say it to a lot of people. I'm not looking for friends today. I'm looking for allies. I have no problem making friends.
Yeah, it reminds me of that meme I've seen on social media where the best friend is the one who's sitting in jail with you. It's not the one you call, it's the one who's there with you.
Totally. So yeah, Latham has been, he's witnessed it, and he's the kind of personality where he just won't tolerate watching people, be oppressed or taken advantage of. So we're aligned in that way. We just have two very different ways of going about it. So again, you have that masculine and feminine energy. I mean, I'm changed because of Latham. He is changed because of me. That wasn't an accident. We couldn't have planned it better.
In some sense, the word planned, it's always seems to me like a draft in the way that people execute on it. Like it sounds like there's a plan that gets created, and then there's a moment where it becomes an improvisational jazz thing instead of just a straight ahead standard chord progression, to use a musical metaphor. In what ways are you able to notice the moment when the logical piece now needs to be adapted? And how do you communicate that when it comes up?
Well, I just had a situation over the last 3 weeks where I hired some folks to help me with a ginormous logistical move that I'm making. And so we came up with a blueprint, right? A plan. And every day I would adjust the plan, based on what I saw. I was like, okay, that's not working. I think this is a priority. So sometimes it just comes to me, truly, it comes to me as a message, switch everything up and let's switch locations. And sometimes I don't even know why, but I do it and something fabulous emerges. So that's kind of I'd say that's the spiritual side of me that I have. And sometimes when that voice is so loud, I listen to it. And then you see. Other times I just, kind of see, okay, things are a little crunchy. And so I'll pivot. And what that brought on, they were so not on board with my pivots. And I said, they were like, you said this. And I said, well, I know I said that, but this is what the environment is telling us. So we have to augment the plan, because if we go straight ahead with the plan as planned, we're not going to be reacting to the real conditions. So that to me is a waste of money and time. And that's really what I did in Silicon Valley. I was just walking around observing, just going, there's so much broken here, and everybody's just used to walking on broken glass.
Mm.
So is it safe to say that skill is about seeing the pivot horizon before most?
Yeah, I absolutely.
Sometimes referred to
Marc,
as seeing around corners.
Well, I said to this one billionaire in San Francisco, I was sitting in his office. He'll call me up once in a while when he needs to be entertained with regular people who just speak regular talk. I don't have sex with them. I just talk.
That
So one day I said to him, I said, I can spot train wrecks and opportunities like that. So when I spot a train wreck, I just, put my foot in the elevator door and pivot.
What is currently the output of Madmana, and what are your aspirations for it?
So the output right now is kind of having a new remodel. And that's because I'm taking care of my mother full time right now. It's taken me about 6 years to get guardianship for her. She was elder abused. And so the last year for me has been kind of just like I've been plucked out in Chicago, back here, adjusting to what she needs. But it's also at a time where elder abuse and lots of abuse is kind of at the forefront. So I think what Madmana has done for me and where we're going to go is I have a proof of concept. So if anyone wants to hear about any of the projects that we've done, which we have not advertised because I really wanted to see, can I do this? And the answer is yes. So basically, I had to separate myself from the well-known people that I worked for and say, is this quality that I have to give and offer, was it unique to that one person, or is this consistent? And so, I had the before, and then I had that huge middle, and now I have 11 years of after. I think 11 years is enough to show that it's a proof of concept. So what I'd like to do is figure out ways of getting that message out, given my time constraints. I've got a lot of responsibilities, but that's what Madmana was here for. It was like, person can't do it all. We need to amplify each other so that our unique gifts are where they need to be. And I know how to do that. Like when I reached out to you, I knew there was a reason I needed to talk to you. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I think we're closer to figuring that out now. And, I'm just going to start getting to know Greg. So who knows what we're going to create out of this? And that is the product of Madmana. We come in with a plan, we start moving it, but it really becomes a bigger part of like my magical laboratory.
Yeah, and it should be said that out of that magical laboratory in the past, major influencers and major players in the world have pivoted and saved millions and perhaps billions and created new and great things as a result of all of that influence. And so it's really an alignment for you as a projector and a generator to be able to continue that process for the world, to be a place where the energy can come through the prism and be transformed into rainbows. So with you, sounds like you're back in Chicago. Is that correct?
No, I'm in California right now.
You're back in California. Okay, great. I just wasn't quite clear on that. One of the things I flashed on about 10, 15 minutes ago was that a lot of the way you describe the work you do reminds me of what it means to make and direct films and produce films. Do you ever feel like it would be fun or something you'd want to do to direct a film?
So that's a really interesting question. Interesting because it's like I don't want to answer that question, but let's just say this. When I worked for the director, I had a camera in my hand every single day because I was documenting everything, because I've been carrying a camera around with me ever since I can remember. Everyone, in grade school and junior high and high school, they're like, call Sarita. She's probably got a video of it. Call, So I've always been doing that before, that long-term job. And then, of course, I had the camera every day there. And a lot of our documentary footage is based on, me carrying the camera around. I wasn't the only one. But I also did 2 very high-profile memorial services while I was there. And so I had to go into homes and go through all their family photos and videos and create these reels for the ceremonies, right? And I remember when I was given that task, I said, what am I, a funeral director now? Like, I said, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And my boss would always say, you'll figure it out. At which I did. Every single task I was given, I figured it out. So at one of these memorial services, he came up to me and he said, you could be a really good director. And he said it hesitating because he is a director, right? So when you acknowledge somebody who's not in your profession as a skilled filmmaker, I was like, I don't want to do that because it looks too stressful. And he's like, well, so it's not only him saying it, but it was also like something that I already knew. I need to be using the film medium to tell the stories. And I've executive produced quite a few movies already. But again, that's that behind the scenes kind of position. And I've got lots of stories that would help people. And it's actually irresponsible for me and selfish if I don't start doing that. And that's, again, probably why I called Madmana an entertainment studio. I was like, why would I do that? Well, it was something that was not quite right for me in 2015, but is absolutely relevant now. And I also trademarked it as a heart-centered entertainment studio, because I knew there was going to be a shift in this industry. And look at what happened. So
Here we are.
A lot of the things I saw, actually me putting them down on paper allowed a huge community to like take those messages, which all I did was stick it out in the field, right? You have an idea and you say it out loud and you do something, it's now in the field and anyone can grab it. And look at what's happened. We're all creative. We're finding out just how creative we are. We are all gonna be entrepreneurs because this slave system is over in my mind.
Oh, God, please.
Yeah, it's no picnic. Both Greg and I are self-employed. So we know of what you speak. And to all of you who have yet to try the flavor, there's something really great about it.
Well,
and it comes with a lot of stress, yes, but it also comes with something else, which is well worth it.
But talking about the slave labor that has been so predominant in humanity, when earlier you were talking, what came to mind is the garbage men and women of our society who are taking our refuse away and how important that is. And for a while when I got divorced, I worked at Safeway and I was highly paid as a starting employee there. I couldn't make a living and I saw families attempting to do it. And it was slave labor.
It's slave labor. Well, at when I worked at Lucasfilm, I used to always say, when George would give us something to do, and if it was a ridiculous task to me, I would say, I am not doing that. And the people who worked in my office would watch this dynamic that we had where he'd be like, well, I told you to do it. And I was like, well, I'm not doing it. And, somebody else would say, well, I'll do it. And I'd say, you know what? Okay, everybody needs to just slow down. And I'm going to say something. I'm going to go, I'm a slave, okay? But I'm a slave who has autonomy, a lot of it. I said, he's a slave too. He's got somebody upstairs who's dictating what he does. So if we all understand that we're slaves, then we have to figure out what is the best environment for us right now. Right? So now I say that sounds, now the people who worked with me were absolutely offended that I would refer to them as slaves. Right?
So don't we have to come up with a better word for that role that we're describing? Because there's so much heaviness that goes with it. Now, it's not that it's not true in the sense that we are compelled by external forces, perhaps sometimes against our will or against our better will for ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. But it feels like that term needs to be redefined, or a new term needs to emerge, because especially not so much for someone who is of your lineage, but for someone like Greg and I to use that term about ourselves is a bit of a stretch for someone whose grandparents were literally in chains.
Yeah, and chattel slave.
Chattel slave, and that's why I said it, because I don't know what your guys' background was, but the people who were in my office who were witnessing this conversation, offended isn't the right word. They were shocked, right? Because that's when that frequency just got so agitated, because everybody's past was coming up in that one moment, right? Yeah. And then so for me and my boss to be having this conversation, and it was so light for us, right? It was, but we knew it wasn't light either.
It reminds me of the Harry Potter story, which I believe that we empower the negative when we can't say its name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the opposite of Beetlejuice.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Well, something I flashed on while you were talking, Sarita, was I made choices during my time there that my wife was very frustrated by, and felt were short changing my life. And as that stacked on, that became something for her that was part of why it wasn't going to be tenable for us to continue at a certain point in our marriage. And for me, those choices didn't represent that at the time. And to the extent that I was influenced by or enamored by or enslaved by, I think enthralled is a good word, right? Enthralled, because I did it to myself. I chose to stay in that role, and ultimately it was great benefit to me. Like I would go back and do it 100 times. I'd do it over and over again. Like if I had 100 lifetimes, I'd repeat it. There's a lot for me there, and my maturity and my skill set and my self-esteem all grew as a result of being in a culture of excellence like that. And my family dynamic was way crazy, and so there was a family dynamic there that structure really felt good to me, right? So in that sense, enthrallment is closer to me than enslavement. And I can see how, like, I know people that literally left and went and did something else and came back in greater positions. And I never did that myself. I never got that calculus. I never realized that was a strategy or a way to do things. And I think that what we're really talking about is our inability to see over the horizon of our own destiny as individuals, right? And since you are innately in tune to that, and we talked about that earlier in the podcast, that you have this innate ability to see the pivot point before it comes over the horizon. I think people end up being enthralled by something and not realizing when it's time for them to shift, to be in a healthier space and to create the next level of their own contribution to the world.
Absolutely. And, I mean, there are lots of environments out there that can, they're just so, it's like a Disneyland. I mean, I worked for Esprit Decor, the clothing company. I worked for the Gap headquarters, for Spiegel catalogs. So, all those environments were very, for a woman, I was just like, fashion, right? Everything about it was just like, I'm a part of this. But that's the hook, right? That's how they
Right.
get you to stay longer than you might know, because then you become a part of that family. So then it becomes more entanglement,
Right.
right?
I have a question for you both, though, because what's coming to my mind is love. And I love filmmaking. And this one production I did in Sacramento, one day it was my birthday, and I was hauling garbage from the set to this gate so it could be taken away all day long, 105 degrees. I hate that day. And it is not impeding the love I have for the experience that I had. And it seems like in hearing both you, Sarita, and you, Marc, in this realm you were in Lucas, yeah, there was challenge and hardship. And that's part of why you loved it.
I mean, the environment, I think that environment was provided for a lot of us to not be of it, to be in it while we were in it, but not be of it, and eventually go out and then take what was positive and see where we can, paint it elsewhere. Because that place is just, I've never seen anything like it ever in my life. So I do feel like we were there at a critical point, even though our lives may have, our families may have suffered a little bit. We for to go find that joy again. And Greg, you brought up garbage now twice. And I want to just say that I do have, because I think about garbage all the time too. I'm constantly looking at garbage. And I actually went to the San Jose Refuse and Recycling Center, which is on like 15 acres of land. And
Wow.
I got a private tour that lasted like 5.5 hours. So I was like, okay, Sarita, you have an interest in garbage? You better get your butt over there. And I was like, okay, so now garbage is on my horizon. But going back to, we do need people to collect garbage, and we do need people to maintain utilities and all this stuff. And I think that there are humans who were born to do that. And if we take care of them, in this benevolent structure, then great, because they don't want to think about things that I think about. Mm-hmm. They might just want to go make things look clean, pick it up, put it over there, and then go spend time with their family at 3:00.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's all these different, we are so complicated jigsaw puzzle, but not really. Sometimes when I want to delude myself a little bit, I'm like, okay, today there's only 7 categories of humans. And that's good.
I can see why. I think that I can see why that would help reduce the noise level and the chaos feeling quite a bit, right? It's like, okay, there's only 7, and that what I think in music terms. So there's 11 notes. If you count 1 and 12, which is the octave, that they're the same. So there's 11, right? 7 and 11. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
When you think about your personal legacy and being free from all of the execution that you've done for those other entities, the billionaires class of people, mm-hmm. What does unfiltered freedom look like for you now and going forward?
It looks like, God, I mean, that's really my healing question. Because freedom for me is the ability to it's to move around, to be able to move around and say what I need to say so that I can reduce the level of suffering and kind of interference in the frequency. Like, if I were free, I could just be able to walk outside, be nourished, be able to, have food in my stomach, not worry about what my housing costs are going to be, and be able to move around and teach and care for people. You know, I am a natural healer. I mean, there's no mistake why I'm taking care of my mother. And it's not because she's my mother and I'm her daughter. I don't feel any guilt, responsibility at all. You know, I'm supposed to be with her. What the doctors have seen with her recovery, they kind of don't even know what to say to me. They're like, how did you do this? Right? So, but that's often the question that people ask me. They're like, how did you do this? And so that gives me joy. That means that I am honing my skill, but it also is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that my freedom is really attached to being able to go where I need to go. Right? And so I used to think it was about having a lot of money, but really I think all the reasons I may have saved money or been very smart about it were to show me what was I going to do with it now. Because, you know, if I wanted to retire in 2018, I could. I'd have to move away from Northern California for sure. And I wasn't ready to do that, you know, because there's something energetic in this grid here that I feel needs healing. I really do. And I don't have proof, and I'm not a geologist. So I know it's hard for me to just answer the question, but freedom is like me being able to go where I need to go to help people pivot quickly and not feel like somebody's telling them what to do. It's like a natural, you know, there's this plant called Daphne. Have you ever smelled the Daphne plant?
No.
Not knowingly.
I'm going to get some for you. So one of the gardeners over at George's started to plant Daphne all over the property, right? And he didn't tell me. And the reason he did that was because he was like, she just runs from here to here to here to here to here, and she's just like never stops. And so when he started to plant the Daphne, it's got this aroma that is so subtle and yet so fragrant. They'd watch, what is that smell? You know, and I would literally stop and look and I couldn't find it. And the gardeners used to just watch and they would get so tickled because they're like, look at her, she's stopping. And she's like happy, she's smiling, right? So that's what I mean when I say I need to run around, but then I also, the support for me has to be so grounding. It's not hard. I don't need to go to a retreat or stay in a luxury, you know, hotel. Those are nice, but I don't need those things.
What do you do on a day-to-day basis for yourself to remain in a healing space?
So now what I do is I just moved again. So I've moved like 8 times in 10 years. So I always picked a house where there was a very large tree. And so one of the things I do, and sometimes it only takes me 5 minutes, is I'll just go literally stand and hug the tree for like 5 minutes. And I've been doing that for like, 9 years now. And it was a little weird for me when I did it, but now I do that because I don't always have time to take a hike. But the other thing I do is, I'm working with people who do know how to shamanically alter frequencies. It's not always immediate, but it's taken me to a level of like a higher level of consciousness, which means that I just have more clarity. And that's what I really asked for. I was like, I can't frizzle out. So what am I going to be able to do that keeps me maintained? And so I had to really go out and find things. And so I'm a part of a planetary co-creator group, and I am very diligent about checking in with that group because it literally pops me out of this kind of, for lack of matrix. And so the matrix is good because it's got structure. But sometimes we have to get out of it just to relax our body. And how we do that is very individual. And so that's what I do. I mean, it's not fancy, right? I can't say that I go for a run every day. That doesn't work for me.
Right. Or
It's
meditate with
sometimes I'll
singing
just,
bowls.
I have singing bowls and I put other people in the singing bowls because it works for me when I'm really stressed out, but I don't make a habit out of it. I've gone to plenty of singing bowl things. I think that they're amazing. And, but you know, again, I hope that we don't end up living in a Costco of spirituality where these become activities that we just kind of do and we're not really applying them.
It speaks to we always need to be our greatest advocate for ourselves. Like you said, it's a personal thing. What we find recharges us.
Yeah. And so we have to try lots of things because not only are we unique, but our environment is changing all the time and we're changing all the time. So this idea of having a routine, I think, is very harmful right now. You know, it's good to get us going and stay organized, but if your routine is broken and then you're like, well, now what do I do? Well, then you're not adapting to this changing environment.
Yeah, the weatherman's got to know which way the wind blows. Is popular.
That's why you brought up the one job that has security and just being wrong all the time.
I think they must have done that on purpose, right? It's kind of like a joke.
It's brilliant. I think weather and death are the two things that we really attempt to think, yeah, we got this. And
Well,
idea.
You can be a baseball player and bat less than a third on base and also make millions of dollars. So it's not just weathermen and things like that. But and a lot of them are weather women now, I've noticed, which is fine. Back to Madmana.
Mm-hmm.
If someone heard this podcast and was really curious about connecting with you and wanting to elevate and clarify what they're doing, what kinds of folks are you looking for? And what's like the thing that is resonating with you in terms of your hopes for Madmana right now?
So I would say that where we are right now is Latham Woodward, you know, my business partner, is so unbelievably creative, and he's such a great filmmaker. He's a great radio personality. And I bring that up because, you know, if I hadn't met with him, I think I would have had to just like dismantle Madmana 2.5 years ago because I was just burning out. And I'm creative, but not in like the mechanical arena. So if people are listening to this podcast and they want to know what they're going to get from us, what I am really going to encourage is all these independent film studios that are emerging. We've got to start sort of like we've got to start gathering now, and we've got to assemble ourselves and split the now, instead of it being another competitive environment, I think we need to like literally figure out how we're going to conquer and be the real independent indie storytellers that we are supposed to be. We are here to tell the human story by the humans, not by the winners of war. And we're going to do that in a creative forum. So what Madmana is, it's the container to assemble all of this. And then hopefully I'll just be the container that manages the benevolent piece of this. Because what I've also seen is I've been around a lot of money. A lot. I've seen it misused and I've seen it used correctly. I've seen it used correctly and then become misused. I've seen it misused and then turn, to better. So to be able to see that throughout my life, but, really I've had a front row seat to that. So, I know how to deploy those resources. I don't want to be at the cash register holding the bag of money, but I want to be sort of the Madmana can be a creative container, but it's also I want it to be the doorway for people who do have resources and do care about independent storytelling to be able to come here, because I've got the proof of concept. I'm not just starting. Like, I've been doing it. So I've already put the skin in the game. And I think that needs to be, now I'm ready to talk about it.
Got it.
Is this a correct observation of mine that the realm of child trafficking and elderly abuse is very close to your heart?
Yeah. So, I did executive produce a movie called Sold, SOLD, and it's about human trafficking. And the elder abuse has been close to my heart probably forever, just because I feel like, the ones who are attacked so easily are the most vulnerable.
Right.
And so when you take away a child's sense of being nurtured, then you've got them for the rest of their life. They are controllable for the rest of their life. They won't even know that what's happening to them is like incorrect. And the elders, what we're doing is we're losing that wisdom, that story of like what happened to them. How did they turn things around? How did they survive? What did they witness for real? Right? So you've got these two loops that have to be together. I mean, my parents raised my son. My son is forever changed. It doesn't matter what kind of shitty parent I may have been at different times. He had that grounding from people who just loved him unconditionally, and they were at the perfect place of, being together. So yeah,
They what? You broke up for a second. What was it they did?
those two topics, they do matter a lot to me.
Got it.
One last question.
And I think we have to talk about it.
If I don't know, Mark, if you like, I could go on for a long time. I'm wondering, this realm of unconditional love that you just are speaking of, can it thrive in our capitalistic business world?
Well, that's just the thing. I think if we look at capitalism as a mechanical object that has been injected into our society, and it's kind of like taking up more space, right? So this is taking it away from the personal, which it is, but it's also, if we looked at it like a fixed object, then I don't think that unconditional love has a space, because this thing is killing it. The elements of this thing are just toxic to the potentiality. I haven't thought about this. I'm just kind of talking. So even if we visualized this thing is out, right? It's out temporarily because it's got to get repaired. It's going to the shop for a week. Okay, let's infuse this pot with unconditional love. Let's try it out. Let's talk about it. Let's, tell our stories, right? And we know we have a limited amount of time before that thing comes back in, right? It's kind of like what we do when our parents went away when we were little. Right. We're like, how much trouble can we cause while they're gone? Who's watching the watch, right? I mean, and you had so much fun when they were gone. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't perfect. Like, people got hurt, people cried, people hit each other. So if we kind of look at it like that, and that's what I try to do. I used to use examples like this with the billionaires all the time. I'd be like, well, just pretend like this. And they understood that, right? So I'm saying it again. I firmly believe that this unconditional love is a way of being. Love is kind of a distorted word too for many people. So that one might need to be reframed also. But if we act in a manner of love as we know it, then that means that it's an ultimate respect for this other being, this other environment. Like, it's a whole different thing. It's not about like, okay, I took out the laundry and you took out the trash, and that means that I love you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like just this general, like, how do we get people to just be in awe of the incredible miracle all of this is?
Yeah.
It's
That-
definitely not transactional. It's right, as you're saying, it's not transactional. It is effusive. It's like I don't know. Okay, it's effervescent. It continues to expand of its own accord out of seemingly nothing. Right? It's like heat from uranium 238. It's just this constant cycle that, when we get out of the way, when we stop being leaden. And it's funny because the alchemists said this. They said turning lead into gold, right? Taking our base instincts, our base emotional responses, and turning them into love, right? So when we get the base out of the way, that's exactly what love is. It's the nature of the universe. That's
it's not
what,
even getting it out of the way. Like you said earlier, it's alchemizing it.
right. And what I was, just to put a point on the point I already made, what I mean is, if we take away that which shrouds our vision, we realize that what really is unconditional love. That's what the universal content is. And that's why so many teachers give us this phrase, it's love or fear, right? It's one or the other. And to me, that's how I've arrived at that thing that they don't know that is the structure of the universe underpinning all the atoms and all that. What is it? It's love. It's creator. It's this enormously rich, infinite fuel that exists in all things. And so artists and creative people, it's like the guy who sees the statue in the marble before the marble is carved. It's that the love is there. We just have to get out of our own way to see it. We have to, remove the thing that hampers our vision from seeing it. And I love the way you said it, Sarita, which is like, if we could just send capitalism to the shop for a few months or a few years and to get it repaired, what would fill the gap? Well, it would be unconditional love. Right? It would be this way of being. And strangely, I have such a hard time because I'm very enamored of Elon Musk. You might say I'm enthralled, to harken back to our earlier conversation. And one of the things he says is, well, we're going to need high basic universal income. And I don't disbelieve him. I think he actually does believe that. And I don't think he's malicious in the way that he sees what he's doing in that sense. And a lot of people project that his vision of things, and which is definitely short-sighted from a resource management. I mean, there's a lot of critique that's available there. But if my theory about the nature of the universe is abundant love, then even Elon is full of love in a certain sort of way. Like, just look at how many kids he has, right? But it's in a way, but he doesn't fit what we consider to be the archetype of what loving, nurturing looks like. He's Asperger-ish around it. And having spent some time with folks that have neurodivergence, I'm like, oh, I get it. The love is not missing. It's my inability to see it in them because of my projection of what it's supposed to look like that's getting in the way.
Yeah. That's really important. And that's why I think we're all really challenged with this ability to communicate why we think something might be good. We get bammed into this, you got to pick a lane. But Elon is a great example because we don't really know him, right? So you can only know someone if you spend time with them. All we see is what the media tells us that he's doing or saying or thinking. And this is one thing, I definitely have learned. I only talk about people that I've actually met in person. If I've met them once and it was like a meet and greet, I don't know them. But I have been, whatever, I think this was part of my divine path, is that I have sat in rooms with change makers, my entire life. And not just small conversations, at a great level. And so that's when I was like, wow, the public perception of who this person is just completely incorrect. And that's not because the person is ignorant. It's because the media does a great job of dressing up the personalities. And they have to do that, because if you look at that as a stage, they need to have people fall in love with the leaders so that we follow as they say. And unconditional love is, like Greg said, we have to be our best advocates, because we are going to lead ourselves through these times. And we're going to do it in tribes, not clubs, in tribes that have each other's backs. And then those tribes are going to network with other tribes. That's how we do this. And that's how history has shown how human survives. And we are now an evolving human, right? So we're not gonna, the new ones coming in are not gonna be like us. They already aren't.
Right.
So these are a lot of complicated things that we just kind of talked about, but I'm glad you gave me this opportunity, because we've got to go everywhere and all around in order to pick an area that we want to focus on, so that we can start mastering all the components of how we can be in an unconditional state of love.
Well, there was one question that I came into the conversation with that I haven't had to ask, and it's going to feel like a little bit of a different turn. But I think we've reached a good conclusion point for this thread of thought. So there's this term that got used in some of the materials that you gave us, and that I've seen other places where I'm learning my entrepreneurial chops. And the term is high net worth individual. And it occurred to me that the way that term is described is also very materialistic, and it's about the numbers in their stock portfolio. But I think there's actually a better definition of what a high net worth is for human beings. And I imagine if I pose this question to you, what is the actual way that, beyond the monetary indication that we usually use this term for, what does a high net worth individual really mean beyond just the monetary point of view?
Right now, I think it's a acronym, that's used because it's easy. And you either are high or you're not. And that's going to affect who works with you, who's going to invest with you. I think it's just a lazy word right now that's good for sorting. And when I think about high net, think about a net. Like, what's the net catching? It's catching fish. And I actually think it's obnoxious. I hate that. High net, and then now we've got ultra high net worth. Ooh, we've just upgraded.
Well, and so what I think of is we're all high net worth individuals. We are all sacred, and outside of commercial terms, transactional terms, and monetary terms.
Yeah.
And when we start to realize the true value of that is when we really start to see.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, but if you have this separation, then if all of us realized that we are powerful too, and that we're creators, there's not just a little handful of people who are creators. It's all of us.
Right.
Right. So I am so excited right now about the future, and, it's getting harder, but we're muscling up. So it's going to, and we're also gathering together more. So I think what I'm seeing is that the ultra high net worth folks, and again, I'm going to refer to the people who gatekeep them, not the actual individuals. Because I see two different things. I see the gatekeepers almost like the military force, and they're going to protect their jobs. They're going to protect their position in society. They've got access to, salaries that might be able to afford them some of these nice things and stuff. So being a part of the game is based on somebody else's wealth. And so they're almost attaching their importance to somebody else. And they'll protect that at all cost. I'm just making this up. This is what I see. And then you've got the layers, right? So it's kind of like a fortress, but this is a fortress of people. Well, guess what? When the people with means decide to go to New Zealand or Australia or Mars, they're not going to take that whole crew with them.
That's right. Sometimes when they just go to Bali for the week, they're not going to take that whole crew with them.
Well, no, because, guess what? The floors need to get refinished while they're in Bali. They don't want to look at that mess. So it demands that the crew stay back so that they can freshen everything up and have everything look like it's new again. It's very strange. It's a lot of energy that goes into taking care of these people. And for me, it always ends up being, and I used to have this conversation with, my old boss quite a bit. I'm like, what would you do if you had to do all this stuff by yourself? And he'd say, I wouldn't get very much done.
That's really brilliant.
So, yeah. So
So I see
creators.
I see Madmana kind of like that one drop of something that can completely clear the grease out of something. And so if I imagine the greatest creator showing up for you and to connect with you and to facilitate all of our benefit through Madmana, that's what I see is the people that are that concentrated essence of beauty and love having a moment to drop into the pool of possibilities. Is there anything you want to add before we sort of start to wrap this up? I think we've reached a place where we're going to ask our final question. But before that, we want to give you the opportunity to get anything in that you haven't felt like you wanted to say that you haven't had a chance to say yet.
No, I think we said a lot. And, for you, I wanted us to have the opportunity to even just dialogue. I have no agenda. I'm not... if people want to come to my website, God, it's not even very well done because we haven't had time to spend time on that. We're too busy actually doing the work.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of word of mouth and me identifying people and projects that I think will add to the value of a healthy human being. And again, I'm not fighting anybody. I still have billionaires call me once in a while, and I don't charge them, just like I don't charge some people who can't afford it. Because if anybody is going to be able to make a decision that betters their ability to do good, I'm going to give it to you. Because I think that is, it's what's that word? When it's infectious. When you imbue somebody with a feeling that they're like, I don't really know what this is, but it allows you to be a better person, just maybe in one or two small acts that you might not have done the day before, then that's improvement. If you're somebody with chronic pain and maybe your shoulder isn't bothering you as much anymore, that's going to improve your relationship with your spouse. And it goes on and on and on, right? And this is where we start looking at the difference between transactional and what do you have to offer that is reciprocal. And sometimes I only think in those terms and I really ignore the material part, not forever, because I know we live on a material plane. But, you keep asking me this myself in the foot. It's like, I want people to come to Madmana and talk to us because I have an ability to really dislodge people just so they can get going again. It's almost like that little bit of extra gas that you need in your tank to get to the gas station. Sometimes that's all you need.
So you're a turbocharge. You flip the
I
switch.
used to have, I used to have a Saab 900 Turbo. That was my first car.
Right.
And the license plates said road hazard.
Right.
HZZD.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Well, this has been a great time, and spending time with you is always interesting and a joy, Sarita. Thank you for making time for us and our audience today. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. And before we go, Greg is going to ask you the one question that we ask all of our guests. And it means a lot to us, even though on the surface it may not seem quite so important.
All right, Sarita. Eminem or Foo Fighters?
Okay, I don't even know what either of those are.
Eminem, the rapper, and Foo Fighters, the rock band? Or
Yeah, I don't know either of them.
Got it.
that's a fine
I'm
answer.
so sorry. Maybe
Don't be
maybe
sorry.
I
No,
got
there's no
Greg.
wrong answer here.
Well, I think it's just kind of funny because I'm going to look both of those up. But when I worked with Marc, I didn't even know who the creator of Star Wars was. I had to say, who's that? So that tells you something about me right there. I don't pay attention to what people do. I pay attention to who they are. And I don't know who they are until I know who they are. So, when I had to ask my friends, I was like, what was I doing in 1977? How like all of you people went to go see this movie and I don't even know what it really is. And they were like, Sarita, you just weren't into that stuff. So we just stopped inviting you.
Well, you're in for a
that makes
treat
sense.
when you go and discover Eminem and the Foo Fighters. There's a lot of richness there, or at least I think so. You may be all, this is boring. Who knows?
Or
But
horrible.
you certainly are not. You are a gem among gems, and your heart shines through the universe across time. And I'm so grateful that we got to spend time with you. And I look forward to more when the opportunity presents itself.
Me too. Let's have fun and let's make some money.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Recording stopped.